Girl finished it with blood on the floor. The Galactic Academy's Xenobiology lecture hall fell into an uneasy silence as Professor Krelix displayed holographic images of various species, anatomical structures. Aliana sat in the back row, her worn datapad flickering with notes, while James occupied the seat beside her, his attention divided between the lecture and the suspicious glances from their alien classmates. Humans were still a novelty in the greater galactic community, species that had barely passed their initial evaluation for spacefaring status. Most species viewed them as fragile death, too aggressive to trust, yet too weak to fear. As you can observe, Professor Krelix droned, his chitinous mandibles clicking. The human skeletal structure is remarkably dense compared to most civilized species. This is a compensatory evolution for their high-gravity homeworld. A Vrelian student in the third row, a reptilian creature named Sarth, let out a hissing laugh. Dense bones for dense minds, he muttered, loud enough for the surrounding students to hear. Several of them chittered in agreement. Aliana's jaw tightened, but she didn't look up from her notes. She'd heard worse in the 3 months since arriving at the academy. James leaned toward her. Just ignore him, he whispered. I always do, Aliana replied, her voice calm but her knuckles white around her stylus. The lecture continued for another 20 minutes before Professor Krelix dismissed the class. Students began filing out, their varied forms creating a chaotic symphony of movements and walking, others slithering, a few floating with anti-gravity harnesses. Aliana gathered her materials slowly, waiting for the crowd to thin. She hated navigating the corridors during peak traffic, where every bump and jostle came with a xenophobic comment or a deliberately placed limb to trip her dot as she stood. Sarth deliberately blocked her path, his 2-meter frame towering over her modest height. His forked tongue flickered out, tasting the air near her face. Excuse me, Aliana said, her voice steady. Your kind shouldn't be here, Sarth hissed. You barely qualify as sentient. Your planet was still fighting wars with chemical explosives when we achieved faster-than-light travel. James stepped forward, placing himself between them. Back off, Sarth. The Vrilian's eyes, 3 of them focused on James with predatory intensity. The male human speaks. Tell me, do all your females hide behind their males? Or is it just that your species recognizes its proper place in the hierarchy? Aliana felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear, she'd left fear behind in the Detroit underground fighting rings where she'd earned her tuition money. This was calculation. Move, she said quietly, stepping around James. Aliana, James began. I've got this. She faced Sarth directly, tilting her head back to meet his gaze. The lecture hall had emptied except for a handful of students who sensed drama and lingered near the exits. You want to test the hierarchy? Aliana asked. Let's test it. Sarth's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Humans, always so eager to prove themselves. Very well, what happened next occurred in less than 2 seconds. But James would replay it in his mind for years afterward. Sarth's clawed hand shot out toward Aliana's FISA warning strike, meant to humiliate rather than harm. But Aliana wasn't there. She'd already moved, her body responding with muscle memory earned through countless street fight. Her hand snapped up, caught Sarth's wrist, and twisted with a sharp, efficient motion. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the lecture hall. Sarth shrieked a sound that hurt. Human ears, and swung his other arm in a wild arc. Aliana ducked under it, stepped inside his reach, and drove her elbow into the soft scales at his throat. The Vrilian staggered backward, gasping. Stay down, Aliana said. Sarth didn't. His species hadn't evolved from apex predators by knowing when to quit. He lunged forward with all his considerable mass, claws extended. Aliana pivoted, used his momentum against him, and sent him crashing into the nearest desk. The furniture shattered under his weight. Before he could recover, she was on him, knee pressed into his spine, one arm wrenched behind his back at an angle that made James wince. I said, stay down. Sarth struggled, his tail whipping wildly. One of his flailing claws caught Aliana's arm, tearing through her sleeve and leaving 4 parallel gashes that immediately welled with blood. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she increased the pressure on his arm until he went still, hissing in pain. Purple blood Vrelian blood pooled beneath Sarth's face where his snout had struck the floor during the fall, combined with the red blood dripping from Aliana's arm. The lecture hall floor looked like a crime scene. The door burst open. Professor Krelix rushed in, followed by 2 security officers, a massive Thorian and a spindly Kixian. What is the meaning of this? The professor demanded. Aliana stood slowly, releasing Sarth and stepping back. He threw the first punch, she said simply, cradling her bleeding arm. I just finished what he started. The security officers helped Sarth to his feet. He was whimpering now, his bravado completely evaporated. His wrist hung at an unnatural angle, and his snout was clearly broken. The Thorian officer scanned the scene, then accessed the room's security footage on his wrist display. After a moment, he nodded. The human is correct. The Vrelian initiated physical contact. Professor Krellick's mandibles clicked in agitation. This is unacceptable. Violence in the academy is prohibited. I know, Aliana interrupted, but so is assault. I defended myself using appropriate force. Galactic Academy Regulations, Section 7, Subsection 3. Students have the right to self-defense when physically threatened. James suppressed a smile. Aliana had memorized the entire student handbook during the voyage to the academy. The professor looked between the two bloodied students, his expression unreadable. Finally, he gestured to the officers. Take them both to medical, then to the disciplinary board. We'll sort this out properly. As they led Sarth away, he cast one last look at Aliana, not with hatred, but with something that might have been newfound respect. In the corridor outside, James finally spoke. That was insane. Aliana examined her torn arm, grimacing. That was necessary. You think anyone will mess with you now? She smiled a cold, satisfied expression. No, they'll mess with humans. But they'll remember what it costs. Word spread through the academy like wildfire. The human girl who'd broken a Vrelian in single combat. The disciplinary board ruled it self-defense and issued both students warnings. But the real judgment had already been rendered in that lecture hall. Humanity had thrown its hat into the galactic ring, and everyone now knew. They didn't back down from a fight. They finished them.